Okay, so that's the book. Follow the link on Learning Suite. The book's at My Educator, $69.99. What else do we have going on here? My teaching philosophy. My teaching philosophy is that I believe that I follow Galileo here. You cannot teach anybody anything. That's a great philosophy. It takes me off the hook. You can only help them discover it within themselves. Now, do I really believe that you're going to discover VBA within yourself during this semester? No, not really. But I do believe the first half of that. I really don't think I can teach this stuff to you. How do you learn it? You learn it by trying to solve problems, by working through code to solve the problem that's been assigned. And so that's a huge part of this class, and it's really where the learning happens. You're going to come to class, we're going to do neat things in class. We're going to do great and wonderful things in class. And you're going to walk away from that thinking, wow, I know great and wonderful things. And then you're going to try to apply what we've done in class somewhere, and you'll go, I can't do this at all. So it's not enough just to come and sit and listen. You've got to do the project. And of course, you'll be wanting to do those projects so you can pass the class. That's really where the learning happens. You will have, many of you this semester will have a really interesting experience with this. And that is, you'll be working on a project, and what we do, 3 or 4 days away, because you're not waiting for the last minute to get started. And you will start programming at about 10 o'clock, and the next thing you know, it's 1 a.m. How did it get to be 1 a.m.? You kind of lost track of time, and you just think, I just have one little thing that's not quite working. And you work on it until 2 a.m., and you just still can't quite get it. And finally, exhausted, you collapse. You have barely enough strength to get to bed, and you go to sleep. And you wake up in the morning, you know exactly how to fix the problem. Is there anyone here who's an experienced programmer? Have you had that experience? Yeah, you had that experience, It's an amazing thing. First of all, you have to be living righteously for this to happen. You have to be a full tithe payer, but you can really solve these problems through revelation. The answer can come to you while you're sleeping. It's amazing. So, kind of one tip going into this is when you get to 2 a.m. and and you have that thought, I just need to get this one more thing and I can go to sleep. As soon as you hear yourself think that, go to sleep. Just don't do that. Because you will continue to work on that while you're sleeping, and I firmly believe that the Holy Ghost is helping with that. When you wake up, you're ready to go. Okay, so I can't teach it to you, but you might learn it through revelation is the other thing as well. Okay, we're going to spend most of our time in this class talking about VBA. I always think, it would have been really great if I could have got some life advice from some of my professors. These guys are pretty old. They've been through a lot. And so I'm going to do this today. I want you to think about your education for just a moment differently. In fact, I think it was in this room. If it wasn't this room, it was a room almost just like this. I was sitting in an accounting class. Any of you accounting majors here? Yeah, that was me too. So I was sitting in an accounting class, and we're learning something, and I thought to myself, why am I learning this? Might have been how to capitalize interest or something. Some hideous thing. And I had an epiphany. I'm learning this because someday someone's going to pay me a lot of money because I know this stuff. I was a junior before I realized that. I was that far into my education before I even realized this was job training. Why did I even come to college? It's another story, but it wasn't for job training. It's because I didn't want to work for my dad for my whole life. I thought, if I go to college, you can accept that as a way to leave the family business. I'm going to go to college. Anyway, so it took me a while to even realize about job training, but I want you to think about your education a little bit more broadly than that. Instead of just thinking, what education do I need to be able to get the career that I want, ask yourself, what does God want you to accomplish in life? What is your life mission? When you get to be like me, where you have probably fewer days ahead of you than you have behind you, you start to think different kinds of questions, like, how's the world going to be a better place because I came through it? We think about some people. Think about we're next Monday. What happens next Monday? Yeah, we're celebrating the life of a great man, Martin Luther King, who literally changed the world because of the things that he did. He had a mission in life, really a mission from God, and it wasn't to do his home teaching. It wasn't just a religion. We think about seeking God's will for us in our church callings all the time, but I want you to think about wondering, what's God's will for me in the broader context out in the whole world? How is the world going to be better because what you did? And that is what I want you to think of as your life mission. And that's really what should be driving the education that you need. You'll need some education for your career. But you also need some education to fulfill that mission that God wants you to accomplish in the world. If you're here at a university, take advantage of some of the other courses that are available. Ask yourself seriously, what is it that God wants you to accomplish in the world? And hopefully you can do that while you're doing your career. Boy, if you can get in a situation where your career is what God wants you to do in the world, that's amazing. It's probably not what it's going to be for most of us. You think about what is that other thing that you can do to change the world, and think about the education that you need for that. Okay, off the soapbox, slash soapbox. The robe. I'm wearing the robe. How many of you see me wear the robe around campus before you came to class today? And how many of you thought, what's that guy wearing the robe for? This guy's like senile. He thinks it's graduation. It's only the first day of the semester. And yeah, there's a lot of us professors. That's what happens when you get tenure. They can't fire you. You totally forget. It's not graduation today? Oh, okay. It turns out, we call this a graduation robe. It's not a graduation robe. It's an academic robe. It used to be that all professors wore the robe all the time. And literally, it's like, you go to McDonald's and the guy's wearing the McDonald's uniform. This was the uniform, if you're a professor. And it was like that way until about the 1940s. In the 1940s, the professorate in the United States said, we have this world war going on. Is the robe really that important? Plus, they're expensive, they itch, you have to dry clean them. What would happen if I came to class in normal clothes? And a few of us tried it, and the world didn't end. And within about 10 years, the professorate across the United States stopped wearing the academic robe. Well, I had to, to graduate with my PhD, I had to rent the robe, and they had the option. It happened that this beautiful maroon color was the first year they offered it. It happened to be the centennial graduation of the University of Minnesota, where I was a student. So they offered this beautiful robe that I could rent. Or, for $600, I could purchase it. And I thought to myself, $600 is a lot of money. Believe me, this is by far the most expensive article of clothing I own. And so I thought, I'm going to be a professor, and I have to put this on every year, once or twice a year. I should probably buy it. My first professorship was at Tulane University in New Orleans. So we are having our commencement exercises in the Superdome. Right? It's the largest room in the nation. That's where we're having our graduation. And by the time I was there for the third year, I realized, this program is exactly the same every year, except for the speaker. But everything else is exactly the same. It got very boring. I didn't have an iPad, or I didn't have a smartphone. So I had nothing to do except fall back on my accounting experience, as an accounting student. And I did a weird thing one day. I decided to amortize my robe. How much did it cost me every time I put this robe on? $37.50. Oh my gosh! $37 every time I put this robe on. And then I thought I had another epiphany. If I wore it twice as often, it would cut the cost in half. And so I started wearing it the first day of the semester. I did that the rest of the time I was at Tulane. So I came to BYU, 2007. And I thought, should I wear the robe? This will give me a chance to quit wearing the robe. If I tried to stop wearing the robe now, I couldn't do it, because where's the robe? Hey, where's the robe? In fact, it's such a distraction on the one day that I forgot to wear the robe. It was like I was late, I just came right in to teach, and the class was in an uproar. Where's the robe? I had to send my TA to get the robe. Did I send you the robe? Send the TA. You've got me. So I came to BYU, I wore the robe. Showed up the second day of class. No robe. A few minutes before class, guy sitting right there in the front said, Professor Allen, where's the robe? I said, I was just going to wear that the first day of class. And he goes, I like the robe. I said, really? Yeah. I said, I like the robe too. I asked the class that day, should I wear the robe every day? It was unanimous. You should wear the robe every day. I've worn the robe every day to teach since then. I thought to myself, they want me to wear the robe. I want to wear the robe. Why wouldn't I wear the robe? Sure, people look at me a little weird, but they look at me weird anyway. I am weird, so I'm okay with it. Actually, my first thought was, when I was trying to figure out where to wear it more, I thought I would wear it to church. How many of you weren't here, but how many of you have heard of the time that Hugh Nibley gave the invocation at commencement? You heard that? Heard this story? So Hugh Nibley, he's an old guy. And he's this really flowery prayer. Is that a word? Prayer? And he said, Dear God, Almighty Father, look down from my high and holy habitation across the mountain's grandeur to we, your servants, we apologize for coming before you this day adorned in the robes of the false priesthood. And he goes on. Kind of a normal prayer, normal for him anyway. After the prayer, did he say the robes of the false priesthood? What he was talking about? And he had to answer this question so often, they finally asked him to give a devotional to explain what did he mean by the robes of the false priesthood. Apparently, these robes, academic robes, are like apostate temple robes. It goes back to the Temple of Solomon, and Masons, yeah, so the Masons kind of picked it up, and that's kind of where these robes came from. So the point is there was something about wearing the robes of the false priesthood to the form of the true priest that didn't quite sit right with me, and so I thought I could probably get away with it in class, and I can't, so here we go.
What's your amortized cost now?
Amortized cost, I'm down to just under $5 per donning, and when I get to $1 per donning, I'm retired. I haven't quite figured out when that's going to be. I might actually start trying to teach 4 times a week instead of 2 times a week to increase it. All right, so there we go. So back to Learning Suite. What do we have? What else do we have going on Learning Suite? Okay. So DreamSpark. So this class is really going to be Excel, but not just Excel, of course. Excel VBA, the programming environment that's built into Excel. It turns out that it's the same language is available inside the Mac version of Excel. However, it's kind of crippled on the Mac. And so for this class, I'm going to assume that you are using the Windows version of Excel. Now, if you're a Mac user, are there any Mac users here who don't already have Windows on their machine? Either, Parallels or something. Okay, so this will be very important for you because we'll be doing a lot of stuff in class, and you'll want to have that in class. So if you follow this first link here on today's day to DreamSpark, give me your information on this link. And because this is taught by an information systems professor, actually we're bending the rules a little bit. Because this is cross-listed as an IS class, our department, the IS department, pays Microsoft a bunch of money to be able to give a certain amount of software out to students enrolled in the classes. And that's called DreamSpark. So sign up for that, and then by the end of the week, you'll get an email that says, here's how you access your software. That will give you a free copy of Windows 10. I think Windows 10 is out there. Then you can use Boot Camp, or you can get a virtualization environment to run that. And of course, you can get the Windows version of Excel from BYU, office.byu.edu or something. Yep.
So I literally have my Microsoft Windows 10 about to purchase it right now.
Don't purchase it.
All right. I save myself $120.
Yeah. Don't spend money there. I can give it to you free.
Awesome.
Yeah, go follow this link.
I do have Parallels, but I just don't have it.
Yeah, follow this link. And I could have saved you the $80 and $40 on Parallels too.
Well, that's
Sorry. The free virtualization environment is called VirtualBox. It's a little bit more involved to set up, but once it's set up, it works really well. And it's done by Oracle, so it's a pretty serious product. Okay, so DreamSpark and the textbook. It turns out we have to have a distribution of grades in this class. It's an MBA class. You might be thinking of the MBA bell curve. Let's say put everyone on the bell curve, get 10% A's. The bottom 10%, what do you get? I don't even know what it is. Is that what it is? Bottom 10%, A minus, B plus, everyone else in between A minus. That's not how we're going to do it here in this class. But the dean does look at what we're doing here. So here's what's going to happen. I'm actually throwing you together with all the rest of the VBA students that we have. So it's one large Learning Suite class. The good news is there's a lot of those students in the other class who don't care about their grade. And the reason they don't care is because they already have jobs. How many of you are in that situation? I've already got a job. My GPA is a lot less important to me than it was a year ago. Yeah. And so what I'm experimenting with, and I'll kind of have the final plan figured out for the next time we get together, but I'm going to give you a way to say, listen, if you'd rather not have the stress of the midterm and the final exam, but you're willing to kind of do the work and come to class, then you say, forget those exams, do the projects, do the homework and the projects, come to class, and we'll score at least 70% on the projects. I don't think we've ever had anyone score less than 70% on the projects who's done them. And you will get a B in this class. Depending, if you do 90% or better on the projects, B plus, in the 80s on the projects, B, between 70 and 80 on the projects, B minus. But we can kind of guarantee that. And you can just forget the stress of the exams. I did this for the first time last semester, and enough people took me up on this that the grades came down automatically. You know, we didn't. Those of you who took the tests, you did better on the tests because all the folks that were going to do bad on the tests didn't take the tests, and so did better on the tests, and kind of the grade just worked out really well that way. So we ended. In fact, I was able to increase about half the students who were kind of close to a cutoff. I was able to shift them up even above what they were kind of expecting to get. So what would be fabulous for me is if I could just come, talk about this stuff, we do great stuff in class, I could assign things for you to do, and then not care whether you do them or not. That would be great for me. But I do have to give distribution somehow, and this is how we're going to do it. So I'll give you the details of that next time we get together, but that's coming. So that avenue that gets you out of the exam will probably require some level of attendance. It won't be crazy high, maybe come to at least half the classes or something, but it'll probably be more than that. Might be able to miss 5 or 6 classes during the semester. And then you'll have to do the work that you've got, where you have help to do it, where you can come talk to the TAs and so forth. Projects and exams. For some reason, I'm not sure why, I don't think if you look at the second column, it shows when things are due. I don't think those are all showing for you. Do you see projects in that column? Let's look and see if this Fallen Angel project due February 1st is showing for you on Learning Suite. No. I'm not sure why that is, but I hope to be able to figure that out. I have to get on the phone with the Learning Suite folks. But I want to point out there are 2 kinds of assignments in this class. The first one are just normal assignments, like this web query assignment, this row highlighter assignment. In fact, let me just follow one of these. I'm just going to go in our book. Where's our book? I need to modify those links to be able to get to them, but right now, let me just come to the assessments over here. I'll show you how these work. So here's one called Read a Text File. I'm just going to download this file. By the way, this is how the assignments are going to work. This is really the reason I wanted to get a book on the My Educator platform. You'll download this Excel file, and it will have built into it everything you need to be able to do the assignment. We'll open up that file. I think I'm opening the file. Here comes File. Enable editing. Enable macros. You have this assignment tab up here. This is the modification to the ribbon that follows the workbook. Really, can you change the workbook in such a way that it brings its own menu along in the ribbon? The answer is yes. Will I teach you how to do that in this class? No. I will help you discover that within yourself. When we come here, we follow the instruction sheet, and that should bring open the instructions. Here's the detailed instructions on what to do for this assignment. Once you've done that assignment, you come back here, and on the assignment tab, you say submit, and it will go through, grade it, and give you a score immediately. So that's the way that all of the homework is going to, whether it's a regular homework assignment or whether it's a project, it's the same thing. How many attempts do you have on all of these assessments? 2. That was the other great thing about getting some folks to kind of sign up to get a B+ in this class, is that I was able to extend the number of submissions on the projects to 2 submissions. I didn't need to use the project so much to get the distribution of grades. And so you get your feedback, make your changes, submit again, and then I've got to decide, should I take the average score, the last score, or the highest score? These are the 3 options that I have on My Educator on how to resolve for the final grade. Let's go ahead and vote. How many of you want to take the average score between your 2 submissions? Anyone? Okay, so you're going to make 2 submissions on a homework assignment. If you get full credit on the first submission, you don't have to submit again. So let's say you get 90% on the first submission, and then you get 100% on the second submission. There's a couple ways that we can do this. One, I can take your most recent submission, whichever it is. So maybe you made some change and you went down. Or I can take the average of the 2 submissions, or I can take the highest score. Those are the only 3 choices that My Educator gives me. So I'm willing to let you chime in on this. How many of you would like to take the average score? Average, most recent, and highest. How about the most recent? Anyone for the most recent?
I want the average.
Take an average?
I'm with him. I want the average.
The average? Okay. Well, there's enough people who want the average. I think we'll do the average. Oh, but we haven't voted on the high score. How many want the high score? Oh, high score is most popular. Why do you want the average? Incidentally, just
Because I think I can do well on the first time through.
you're going to outcompete your fellow students. Interesting. Yeah, neat. I think we'll take a high score here for this. That was the popular choice. It turns out that we've actually done some academic research on this. And it turns out best learning happens when we take the average score. Why? You really care on that first submission. So when you get the feedback is more meaningful to you. In fact, when we take the high score, some of you will actually just submit before you do anything, so you can see all the detailed feedback that the grader's giving you. Yeah, I really hope you'll do that on the first project, because you're going to do really badly on that first project. That will help me get the distribution. I don't think I need all that much help. You really should give it your best shot and then submit, because there's kind of, in fact, the whole reason that I'm giving you that I'm going to take the highest score is because there's enough kind of question in some of these directions where it might not come really clear to you, and then you go, oh, that's what that meant, and then you'll have a chance to go back and get it. So you really do want to give it your best shot on the first time through. Okay, but here's the thing. So that's how you go through it, right? You'll download it, you'll work with the assignment tab, and then that's where you'll submit. Now, two kinds of projects. First kind of project are two kinds of homework, two kinds of assignment. One's a homework. Homework is typically due on the day that we cover a topic. So here we're going to be talking about web queries. I want you to do a web query. This assignment is really incredibly easy. How many of you have made a web query before in Excel? Oh, not that many. Still, even if you haven't, it's really easy to make a web query. You'll learn how to do it, and then you'll submit it. My hope on the homework is that you will do the homework before class. I'm not teaching this stuff to you until that class, but I want you to engage this material before you come to class. However, it's not due until the night that we cover that material in class. And so if you're thinking, you know what, I don't really care that much about this class, I just want to come and listen, and I don't want to read ahead, I just want to learn how to do the homework and then just kind of quickly do it after class, that's okay. Are you going to learn as well that way? You're not going to learn as well that way. Do I care? Not really. You know, if you're really saying, this is not the most important thing in my life, I want to come and get something out of this, but I don't have to go crazy about it, I'm okay with that. So it turns out the book is fabulous. I hope you read the book. Why am I making you get the book? It's so I can do the automatic grading. It's so I can allow you to get that feedback instantly. That's the whole purpose there. If you don't read the book, that's up to you. Will you do better at this stuff if you read the book? Absolutely. Okay. So the idea is you're going to learn this before class. Because of that, I want you to get together with your buddy and work on this together. As long as your fingers are doing the homework, you can have two folks working together on it, that's fine. What if one person totally gets it and the other person is all, wait a minute, what did you type there? What did you type? As long as you're not just copying, but you understand what's going on, that's okay for the homework. So, collaborate. Groups 2, 3, 4. A group of 20 for the homework? No. But kind of small groups, talk through it, that's great. There's a question in the back.
Yeah. I just tried to click the link, and it says that I'm not allowed.
Yeah. Actually, this link right here is actually going to, I'll show you to you. This is going to course 1206B. This is actually last semester. I've got to go through and update these links, which I forgot that I had to do. And so it was so nice. I copied the class. Look, all the assignments are just there. I forgot I have to go and actually update each one of these links. So we'll have that. I'll have it done by tomorrow. Okay. Yeah, because it's actually trying to take you to a different course on My Educator that you're not a student. Okay. Now, there will be 5 or 6, depending if I modify. I've been thinking about joining the last 2 projects into one, but there'll be 5 or 6 projects throughout the semester. Here's the first one due February 1st. Projects are fundamentally different from homework assignments. Homework assignments, I expect homework assignments to take you between 5 and 25 minutes to do. Projects, it's going to be hours. Several hours for you to do this. And the project is where you demonstrate to me that you have learned the stuff I've been trying to teach you. Homework is where you engage the material so that when I start talking about it, I'm not teaching to a blank slate. You've had some experience with it. The project is where you show me that you've learned the stuff. Projects are individual endeavors. If you treat a project the same way you treat homework, 2 guys sitting down and kind of working through it together, that would be violation of the honor code policy here at BYU. It's an individual assignment. You're allowed to talk to 5 different people 6 different people for the project. 7 if you count talking to yourself. You can talk to yourself. You can talk to me. You come and see me about a project. You can talk to one of the 4 TAs. Actually, you can talk to 4 of the 4 TAs. And you can talk to God. Those are the folks that you're allowed to talk to. And if you talk about the specifics of this project with anyone else, you're violating the honor code policy. You see what I'm saying? This is where you show me that you can do it. Now, you don't have to show me that you can do it, without reference. Are you allowed to use the book? Yes. Are you allowed to use online? Yes. Well, don't use online to chat with someone. But if you're looking at a resource on, on the what's it called? The interweb. If you're looking at an online resource, that's great. Now, what about this? What about going to a VBA help forum and posting a question about the project? Is that allowed? No. I had a student do that once. Don't do that. I failed him for doing that. Don't do that. The most frustrating thing was someone on that site gave a really good answer to my project. And what was the problem? I said you can go anywhere online. It was okay for anyone else to then look at that answer except the guy who asked it. If I had to change that project, it was a real hassle. Folks, it's a lot of work to make one of these projects. The reason I failed him wasn't so much that I thought he should have failed. It was that he made me make a whole new project. That was a lot of work. I didn't have very much to do that I could get back at it for. And so
So you can read sites like Stack Overflow.
Stack Overflow, absolutely. Yeah.
But not posting.
Yeah. If you find a posting that looks like someone has posted one of my projects, or some details, you go, oh wow, this is totally right from background. Please let me know about that, and because I'd like to know when that happens. Because if you find online the code and you copy and paste and it works, did you learn anything? A little tiny bit. You learned something, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. So, okay. So, and I will remind you, as we get to doing the projects, I'll remind you of that, because the projects, in a sense, they feel like the homework because it's the same process. You download the workbook, you get the instructions, you do it, but those projects are individual. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have? I can't remember. I'm going to be recording. I'm going to try to record every class, and then I will post up the recording as well as the notes from whatever we've done in class. But largely in class, we're going to work through stuff together on your machine. So you'll have machines open in front of you. There will be times when I'm covering something that you totally already get, either because you read the reading and you went, I totally get this, or because it's a general programming concept that you learned in some other language. How many of you are experienced programmers in some other computer programming language? A few of you. So there'll be times when we're going over something and you're going, oh my gosh, we've been talking about variables for a half an hour. And if people already understand variables in another language, then I could do it in 5 minutes. But if it's the first time you talk about variables, we're going to spend a little more time on it. In that case, I encourage you to use that computing device for something that can help you be productive during that time, as long as what it is isn't distracting to your fellow students. Don't be playing whatever. What game might you play? What first-person game might you play in today's? It's not Doom anymore, which was the first one I tried to play, and I literally got motion sickness from it. So I'm done with that.
Actually, New Doom just came out.
What's that? What is it?
Actually, New Doom came out last year.
Oh, New Doom? Yeah, so don't play New Doom because it will be distracting. I don't want to have to compete with Doom. All right, so, but if you're checking your email or your trading stocks or whatever, that's okay. All right. Okay, hey, this is an MBA class. The first 2 letters are MBA. So what does that mean? It means we don't come to class next Wednesday. So that's the MBA recruiting trip. By next Wednesday, I mean the next Wednesday that we bump into as we're walking along in life. Right, the day after tomorrow. No class. Week from today, Martin Luther King Day. So it's going to sound like a long time before we get together. A week from Wednesday. That's when we're going to get together next. And then the web query assignment will be there. And I'll get that link repaired by tomorrow for you to be able to follow that link and do that assignment. Okay. Web query, everything looks pretty good. Assignment. All right. So 3 columns here. 1 is like, what do you do to kind of prepare for class? 2 is what's due on this day. And then over here is where I'm going to put stuff that we've done in class. So videos as well as like the file that we've generated in class. What happens if on a day I have some kind of technical difficulty and the video didn't record. I'm going to put a note that says technical difficulties, no video. And I'll feel fine about that. So if you're thinking, I don't have to come to class today because he's going to record it, I can watch it, tonight with popcorn. Just realize that from time to time those videos aren't going to come through. Okay. And I don't feel like it's my responsibility to put that video. I'm doing that video because it doesn't take too much effort, and I know it's really valuable to be able to go back and pause and say, what did he say? Go back and do that. But to me, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't go through. So this is kind of a little warning there. All right. Then I'll also, over here in the first column, often have things that I'll put there because I want you to download them for us to work on in class. And so that's the case here with this client schedule. So what I want to do next here is I want to work through this, now look at this data, and we're going to look at VBA a little bit. So I've written a procedure here that we'll step through. We're going to look at part of it in detail. Part of it, we're just going to say, here's some more complex code that I don't want to scare you with yet, but we'll get up to be able to do stuff like this later to go through this. And so just an introduction to the language. So first of all, VBA, I'm going to have to enable editing. And it may ask me to enable macros. I don't know, it may not. Okay, so go to the developer. We're going to start by looking at the developer tab. So click on the developer tab. Do you have a developer tab? Is there anyone here who does not have the developer tab? Okay, so what you need to do is get the professional version of Excel. No, I'm just kidding. It turns out the developer tab, you have the developer tab, it's just not visible when you start off. The reason is the good folks in Redmond, Washington thought that there is so much raw power available on that developer tab, we don't want mere mortals to have access to it. And the truth is, you really don't want my mother poking around on the developer tab. And so, but you're going to be okay. So let's go ahead and open up the developer tab. So choose File, Options. File, Options, and then you've got this thing here called Customize Ribbon. The only thing with the developer tab is that it's just not shown by default. So when you come here for the first time, developer tab is not checked. So just check that and click OK. Oh, here's kind of the fun one here. We have a tab called the Home tab. You can actually uncheck your Home tab. You get tired of having that Home tab in Excel, you can get rid of it. Why would you want to do that? Well, you might want to not do it for you, but April Fool's Day is just a few months away. You might have a roommate that just needs to have his Home tab disappear for a little while. So you could uncheck that. Actually, that'd be a sin. You probably shouldn't do that. On the other hand, I do encourage repentance. So anyway, that'll give you the developer tab. So the developer tab will then give you a host of tools. We're not going to use all these tools in this semester. This first one here will take us to the Visual Basic environment. Now, actually, the language that I want you to get the lingo. The language we're learning in this class and the language that runs inside of Excel is Visual Basic for Applications. It's like a long language name, abbreviated VBA. Why does it say Visual Basic here instead of Visual Basic for Applications? It would make the button too wide to be able to put that whole name up there. It's just abbreviated here. There is a language called Visual Basic, and with Visual Basic, I can create entire standalone programs. Someone would download, they would install, and they would run. VBA requires a host application. So anything we write in VBA, if I send it to someone else, they have to have Excel to be able to run the VBA program. It has to have a host application. And we can use the language to write applications for Excel, for Word, for PowerPoint, for Access, for Visio, for Outlook, kind of the whole Microsoft suite we can automate using this language. Now it turns out that the actual language itself is pretty small. There's only like 67 reserved words in VBA. But there are a lot of objects that are specific to the different environments that we have to learn how to manipulate. And those objects have kind of other instructions. They're called methods that we have to learn, and that's where we do most of our work, is by manipulating objects. Whew. That word object is the most frightening word to me. Object-oriented programming was invented in the 1960s, but it didn't catch on to the 1980s. In the early 1990s, I took my very first object-oriented programming. It was in this room. No, it was in this building. Somewhere else on this floor. It was taught by an old guy. was a C++ class. I was about 3/4 of the way through the class before I realized I still didn't know what an object was. So object-oriented programming, and somehow I had missed. I don't really understand what an object is. You're in luck, because I'm going to teach you what an object is today. You ready? An object is a thing. An object's a thing. It's a thing that we can manipulate in two specific ways. These objects have properties. If I think about a particular thing here, I think about this cell right here, cell B1. That's a thing. It's got several properties. Can you guess what a property of cell B1 might be? A little louder. Okay, so the text. It's actually called its value. What it's actually displaying. Okay, what else might it have? Especially if it's not displaying what's actually in the cell. Okay, so it's going to have some color, some font size. Yeah, it's going to have a formula. So this one doesn't have a formula, but I mean, it has a formula property, and the formula is actually the same as the value. So properties of objects are they're just values that describe the way that thing is. How is this thing right now? It actually has a property called row. This object, this cell, has a property called row. What do you think the value of the row property is? 1. Yeah, it's got a property called column. What do you think the value of the column property is? Well, that's good. It's not B, it's 2. It's actually a numeric value. See, so both row and column are numeric values that describe something about the way the project is, or what that object is. Now, objects also have another characteristic. It's called a method. A method is something the object knows how to do. And so each one of these objects have a method called select. And when I refer to this object and I call its select method, it's an instruction to that object to tell it to do something it knows how to do. What does it do when I tell it to select? It makes itself the active cell. And so that's one of the methods that range objects have. And a range can be just one cell or be multiple. It can be multiple cells. Okay, so that's a large part of what we're going to do in this class is get familiar with a set of objects, their methods, and their properties. And then those will largely be specific to Excel. So even though we're learning VBA, and VBA is the same language we use to automate Word, if you try to take what we learned in this class and go to work in Word, you'll have the general feeling that it's going to be a whole different set of objects that you have to learn and work with. But it'll be the same language. Okay. So, let's take a look at this. So let's suppose that this data that we have, I want to point out one thing. You're very used to working with files that end with XLSX. This file is XLSM. What's the difference? Macro enabled. What was the problem? Back in 1995, when they introduced the Visual Basic Programming language. Before 1995, macros were unbelievably simple. When I would say I want to record a macro, literally, it would just record the keystrokes that I type. And in a worksheet, I would come here to like K2, and I would say, I want to record a macro, and it would be great. I'd start typing stuff, and it would just start putting keystrokes going down right through here. Just keeping track of what I did. It was developed in a time before the mouse, to where if you just did the keystrokes, you knew you could do anything. By 1995, folks went, maybe this mouse is going to catch on. This mouse thing might be here to stay. And we need some way to do this that's more advanced than just keeping track of keystrokes. And that's when Microsoft introduced this idea of, when they introduced the language VBA. And so instead of recording, when we recorded something, instead of recording the keystrokes, it would write in the VBA language the actions that it's actually doing. It was fabulous. By the end of the 1990s, some evil people figured out that this language was powerful enough to do evil things. We could give someone a workbook, and when they opened it, without them knowing about it, we could delete a bunch of files on their hard disk. We could make other copies of this, and they weren't too evil until they figured out how to email them to other people with a note that says, here's the report you asked for. You open it, and what does it do? It deletes a bunch of stuff on your hard disk and then sends the stuff out to other people. In fact, in the 2000s, early 2000s, by far, the most prevalent viruses were these macro viruses. Look, to write a computer virus, a true virus, you have to be an evil genius. It takes really great programming prowess to write a virus. Macro virus, you just have to be evil. There's nothing difficult about it. And so by 2007, Microsoft said we got to stop this. And so when they introduced Excel 2007, they said different format. If it's an XLSX, there is no way you can have a macro running in there. And it's right. There's just no macro in it. If it's XLSM, you should know, just by the extension, you should know, this is a macro-enabled workbook, and if I open this, all heck might break loose. So yeah, you really shouldn't open macros that or workbooks from people you don't really trust. And even then, the guy emailed, if you weren't expecting it, probably should check to make sure it belongs. But macro viruses have really declined since then because of this change. They're almost non-existent, although I guess there's still a few out there. Questions? So that's XLSM, that's why it's in this format. All right. So let's suppose that what we're looking at here is, let's suppose that you're some kind of a counselor. Maybe you're a financial counselor, maybe you're a marriage counselor, you're a family counselor, whatever it is. You have scheduled appointments with clients. And here is your schedule for this week. You've got Christopher Taylor. Hopefully you had the appointment because it was 8 o'clock this morning. You've got some tomorrow, and here they are. I'll suppose that this is just something that gets downloaded out of your company's system. You want to be able to get your data about your schedule. This is the way it comes. What do you think? Common? Is that a common, or is that some fanciful thing I'm talking about? That you might be able to download your data, and this is what it looks like.
Super common.
Yeah, common. This is the way this data comes to you. If you want to do something beyond what the system does for you automatically, okay, here you go. Start with it. Okay, so let's say that you've got this data, and you're wondering to yourself, when am I available? I don't want to schedule an appointment, but I gotta go to the dentist. I got a tooth that I think might be giving me trouble. How long is it to the dentist? When can you go? It's going to take you an hour. You've gone for an hour for the initial checkup. When can you go? Look at it. When can you go? This is pretty tough to tell by looking at this. If only there was some environment that would allow us to automatically look at this data and present it in a different way that's more readable. Oh, that's VBA. Let's take a look. And I have that example built in here. What I want to do first is run it first so you can see what it's going to do. And then we'll kind of step through it and look at the code that does it. So I'm going to come to the Developer tab. And actually, let's do this. I'm going to click on the list of macros here. And I have something else open, which is going to look a little more confusing. So I'm going to close this other workbook. Stand by. Let me close this one. But only one workbook open. Developer tab, macros. There's one called Make Schedule. It's going to be pretty easy for me to look at. But let's do this. While we're at it, we can run this, but let's come down here to Options. And we can assign a shortcut key to this. Let's see. This is called the schedule. So why don't we call it Control S? Wait a minute. Control S sounds familiar. What does Control S do?
Save file.
Not anymore, it doesn't. Now Control S runs this macro. Do you see why you don't want my mother doing this? Wish you'd call me up. My Excel's not working anymore. Yeah, Mom, that's a shame. Let me see if I can help you out with that. But watch this. Instead of Control S or S, what if I put a capital S in there? And like magic, this is now Control Shift S, and that's pretty good. So now to run this, I can either click Run right here, or if I cancel that, I can press Control Shift S, and that will then take all the information from this macro and give it to me graphically. That's not even really graphically. It just sets up a few columns, puts the names of these, for this week's data, and then it puts, oh, wow, how did it do that? Is that that's witchcraft? What is this? How did it do this? And it's not even. Some of these aren't even in one cell. What have I done here? What is this? Yeah, that's just a line, right? You would just do this by going Insert, a shape, and then picking a line. You could draw that line in there. The only thing we've done is we've told VBA to look at this data and to draw a line into this grid space here that represents each one of these. Well, that looks pretty good, but what's the problem? I mean, what would you really want this to do? What does that bar mean right there? It's some appointment. Which appointment is it? Well, it'd be nice if I could click on that and have it, oh, wait a minute. Have it, oh, hey. I click on that line and it highlights the one that it refers to. That is witchcraft. In fact, I might look here and realize what? yeah, I've got some kind of a conflict here. Here's Christopher Taylor, starts at 8 and goes for 80 minutes. Here's Teresa Watkins, starts at 8 and goes for 50 minutes. Yikes. I hope you're not, maybe I was gonna do the thing together. And I was gonna spend a little time with Christopher after the appointment. But if it's a conflict I need to correct, what would I have to do? Well, let's just call Christopher and bump him to 9 o'clock. I can make that change here. Now, of course, I probably want to make this whatever system, is the main system. But now I've got to redo this whole thing. Well, I could delete those columns, and then Control-Shift-S. And now I've modified that one. Christopher's now here, and I can redo it. So, is this kind of skill kind of be a handy thing? Absolutely. So let's take a look at the code that does this. And I want to do this to at least dip our toe into the idea of how does this language work. I'll start off again by deleting this. So I'm starting off with a blank set here. Okay. Now, what we're about to see might cause you to decide to drop the class. What I'm not trying to accomplish today, I'm not trying to teach you all the stuff that we're looking at here. In fact, I'm not trying to teach you any of the stuff we're about to look at today. What I want you to do is to get a sense for how this language works. I want you to kind of sit back and feel the VBA. But don't stress over thinking, oh, I've got to remember that, oh, I've got to remember that, oh, I've got to remember that. We're going to talk about this in general. Okay, so to get to that code, let's do this. I'm going to come to my Developer tab, go to my list of macros. Now, instead of running this, I'm going to edit this. And your Excel is about to look different than you've ever seen it look before, especially if it comes up maximized. It's just another window, separate here, but this is the Visual Basic for Applications editor. And it has brought us to this thing called Make Schedule. So, first thing that we're going to realize is anytime we have a set of instructions that we want to run together, we say, well, I've got a bunch of steps, do these all in order. I'm going to put them in what's called a sub procedure. Starts with the keyword sub, ends with the keyword end sub, and that is a sub procedure. This whole set of steps then is going to run together. In fact, not at the same time, they will be a set and they will run one after another as directed. So let's just watch. I encourage you to just kind of sit back and watch this. If you really want to do this along with me, go ahead. But just kind of, I'll talk you through this. So to make this run, I'm going to run this in a special way called step mode. I'm going to press F8, and that's going to say, all right, we're going to run this one line at a time. Instead of running the whole thing, we'll go one step at a time. And F8 will do that for me. I'll just press F8. Okay, so now we're getting to this line right here. We're about to execute this line.
How do you move through the steps?
F8, yeah, just F8. F8, we'll go one step at a time. Now, we've never seen the language before. It's our first look at the language. I want someone who doesn't have any VBA experience to look at this line and just make a guess as to what this does. Look at it and say, I'm going to tell you what this does. I haven't taught you this yet. I want you to look at it and see, can you guess it? Can you figure it out by looking at it? Someone volunteer and say, I've never programmed in VBA and I think I know. Go ahead.
The H1 cell equals, so the quotes means number 8.
That's exactly right. What we're going to do is we're going to put this value, 8:00, into cell number H1. Well, why do we say range instead of cell H1? And the answer is this little statement right here allows us to specify a particular range that will take this value. It might just have one cell, or if we look down here, it could be a bunch of cells that I'm going to modify at once. So it's called the range method or the range property, and it allows us to identify the cells we're talking about. Now, that gets me to the object. You're going to find out the dot in VBA, the period, is very important. So before that period, we are getting to a particular thing that we want to manipulate. And now we're referring to one of its properties. It's got lots of properties. It's got a formula. It's got what's being displayed. That's called its text. It's got the value. That's what we're talking about here. It's got a font. It's got whether the font is bold. It's got the color of the background. It's got the borders. It's got what color the top border is. It's got what shape the bottom border is. It's got lots of properties. I'm going to refer to one of them. And this equal sign says I'm going to take whatever is on the right-hand side and put it into what's on the left-hand side. This is not an assertion of equality like an equation in math. It's an assignment. In fact, we can, this keyword is not required, but it's still allowed. I can put the keyword let in here, and it turns it into a sentence. It kind of sounds like the voice of God, doesn't it? Let range A1's value equal 8. And when that line happens, that's what happens. We got tired of typing let all the time, and so they said, okay, you don't have to type let. If you just put something equals something else, we'll know what you mean. But that's still valid syntax. You can still do that. So watch what happens. I'm going to execute that line with F8, and in fact, there it is. I'll do the next one. I1, K1, L, M, N, O, P, Q. They all went in there. Now I'm going to put in these names. They go in one at a time. Beautiful. Okay. Now let's look at this one. Anyone want to tackle this one? You don't have to know what 3 means. Kind of talk to me a little. Tell me what's going on here. Go ahead. Yep.
You're selecting all the cells in the range between H1 and Q1, and you're changing the width of it.
Okay, so good. We're referring to, so here's the main kind of new thing, is referring to multiple cells. Everything from H1 to Q1. Now, here's one of the magical things about VBA, is that I don't have to select it to make something happen. If I wanted to make that happen inside of Excel, I would have to select it to tell Excel what I'm talking about, and then modify the one that's selected. But here, I don't need to select it. All I have to do is refer to it. So I am talking about these, not selecting them, talking about these. That's the object. I have the dot, and now I'm going to modify some property of this. The property I'm changing is, the alignment. Right now, they're aligned to the right. And I'm going to change them to number 3. What is that?
3 spaces from the left.
Actually, no, it's not putting spaces in. What it's doing is it's giving it a code that tells it make it centered. So 3 means centered. 2, I don't know what 2 means. Let's see. 2 means aligned left. 1 probably means aligned right. But I want it to be aligned 3. I'm telling it to center. And that's what that does. So 3 is like a code. There are 3 different ways we can do it, left, right, and center. And we're going to align it to the center. And code 3 means center. Okay, now we're going to look at this one. Now this one introduces something else that's a little bit different. So far the same, we're referring to the same range. Now we've got a property called entire column. Ugh. Here's something that's interesting. This little instruction here, this property, returns a range. This property says, I'm talking about a range. Now, from that range, I want to refer to a different property. This property does something similar. This property refers to a range. It says, great. I want to talk about the entire column of H1 to Q1. That will now give me a new range that I'm talking about. What range am I talking about? Yeah, the whole column between H and Q columns, the whole thing. And so now this gets me to another object. And now I'm going to change a property of that object. The property is called the column width. I'm going to put a new value in the column. I'm trying to make these columns a little bit wider. And so I'm going to make them 10.71 characters wide. Like a weird way to think about it, but that's the way it works. And we can see it made them wider. Now I'm going to change the width on this one too. Before I get there, we got a question.
On the entire column one, if you didn't have a number, if you just did range H through Q, would that automatically select the whole column, or is that the only way to select the entire column?
Okay, so the question is, what would happen if we left out this entire column?
And took out the ones on the range. So the range said range.
Oh, just H to Q. Yes, interesting. Could we refer to this whole range by saying just H colon Q? And the answer is yes. But until we say entire column, the column width will only be a read-only property. We can ask what the column width is, but we can't set it. We really have to get to a column object here that's separate from just the range object. Good question. But you can refer to that in that same way you would in a formula. Say column A through Q, just A colon Q for those whole columns. That would refer to that. And if we're doing other things, we could
select it, but you couldn't edit it.
You could select it, but you couldn't change the column width. You could put a value into all those cells. There's lots of things you could do to column width. Just isn't one of them. Okay, so this next one, we're going to change the width as well, but we're doing it differently. Again, from range G1, we're going to the entire column, then how are we changing the width? Yeah, we're saying we don't care how wide it is as long as it's wide enough to hold everything that's in it. And so that should run that. We'll run that. We should see the column G get a little bit wider. There it goes. Okay, this next one's kind of interesting. This is actually assigning a variable. We're going to talk about variables later. Let me just give you a little peek at this construct right here, because it's really powerful. Okay, so cells, let me play with this a little bit. I'm going to open up my immediate window by choosing View, Immediate Window. The immediate window just gives me a little place where I can play around with one line of code. I can just do something here in this. I could do one thing here. For example, I could say range F3, R-A-N-G-E, F3 dot select. I can tell range F3 to go select itself. And by executing that line here in the immediate window, it just runs that line and does it. Just whatever I put here doesn't get saved. It's just a place for me to put something to kind of play with. So let me introduce you to something called the cells. So range, I give it a string. I tell it, F3, that's the one I'm talking about. But here, if I want to talk about F4, I would say the row that I want, 4, comma, and then the column that I want, F, is that 6? B, C, D, E, F, yeah, 6. And then that will select row 4, column 6. Incidentally, I don't have to put I can take a number here, but I could put a letter here in quotes, and that will know we're talking about column E there, so that's kind of nice. So what cell am I talking about up to this part right here? Row number 1,000,000, column number 1. That's A1,000,000. If I go to that cell, Control G, go to A1,000,000, that's the cell I'm talking about, that one right there. What's so special about that one? It's really far way down there. It's almost to the bottom. I have 1.02 million rows, so I still have 200,000 to play with, but we're getting down there. Now, so I'm somewhere really low on the worksheet. Now, if I wanted to go up to, until I bumped into some data, what keystroke would I push in Excel? I can Control up arrow. And actually, back in the 1980s when this stuff was developed, we had a hard time pushing 2 keys at the same time. It was, the shift key was all we could manage. Capital A, shift A, okay. Control up arrow, no, we're not ready for that yet. And so the way that we used to do that before they invented the control key was we hit the end key as 2 separate processes. Watch this. I'm down here on A1,000,000. One finger, end, pow. Now one finger, separate keystroke, up arrow, boom. End up as 2 keystroke sequence does the same thing that you're used to doing with control up. Now look at that heritage right here in the code. From here, referring to this cell, I am saying end up. You see it? I'm saying end. Which kind of end do I want to go? I want to go up, and that will refer to a different cell. Now, at no point do I ever select either of these cells. All I'm saying is, Excel, think about cell A1,000,000. And then from there, think about the cell that you would be on if you hit Control up or end up. And then from there, I'm asking about a property. What property am I asking? I want to know what row that's on. So what is this expression telling me? It's telling me the row where the data ends. And in fact, I'm putting it into a variable called last row. I just want to hold that value around to do something with it later. In fact, when I wrote this example, I meant to say we're doing a loop here. Instead of to 31 to last row. Last row. 31 happens to be with the last row, and I just didn't kind of connect the dots on that. Now, starting here, we're going to end up with some things that are more complex that I want to look at. What we're doing here is we're first asking what day of the week it is. There's a function in VBA called weekday. Let's take a look real quick. Weekday. Whoops. I'm going to print, print, the weekday of a particular day. January 1st in the year 2011. That was a Saturday. 7 is Saturday. 1 is Sunday. If I want to, I could ask what is the day today? Now. Today is Monday. That's a 2. Now minus 1. That was 1 day before now was Sunday. And so the weekday function just looks at a date expression and figures out a number 1 through 7 depending on what day of the week it is. And so I'm asking for the day of the week, looking at whichever row I'm on, which is going to start off at 2. So this loop will start here looking at row number 2, looking in column C, it's asking for that date, it's asking for the weekday of that. And it's just remembering that's going to be the day that we're talking about. It's asking for the day of the week that this is. I remember Monday is 2, Wednesday is 3, and so it's kind of convenient that my Monday through Friday here happens to be on row 2, 3, 4, 5. So that weekday is going to correspond directly to this. If it was somewhere else, I'd have to do a little more math on it to offset it to the row I'm talking about, but it's the right row that I'm talking about here. So I'm going to use that to figure out which row I'm working with. I'm going to do a little more math, and this is more than I want to dive into here. But again, I'm looking at the data, trying to figure out the x and the y for where I want to draw these lines. My duration is just going to be the number of minutes that we have here. And so by this time, I've calculated an x and a y and a length for how to make that line. So when I get to this line here, I'm making a new line. It's going to be on my active sheet. I'm going to add a connector. I'm calling a method called add connector. And I'm specifying it's going to be a straight line connector. It's going to start at, let's see, the top is going to be y, whatever I've calculated here. In this case, it's 451 somethings, some kind of measurement unit that excels. It's not pixels. It's not rows. It's just some other units that they use. I'm going to start at 21, and it's 2 ordered pairs. I'm going to give an ordered pair and an ordered pair where this is going to start. X will be, let's see, this must be not my top, this must be my left. So I'm first starting with my left, which really should be the X, not the Y. I have this backwards. Anyway, that's the left. And so it's going to be the same top, but it's going to start at one left, and it's going to end at the left plus the duration. So that's going to give me a line, 2 points that will give me a horizontal line. And we should be able to see that line come up right here. Execute that line. There it is. Can you see it? It's really small. I'd like to make that line weight a little thicker. So I'll make it 2, I think it's 2 points wide. Now I want to put ends on it, and so you can see that line that we just created. We're going to change the line property of that, which is another object itself. I want to change the arrowhead style of the line of that shape to be oval. That goes the oval. The next oval goes there. I want to give it some instruction on what to do when the user clicks on it. This is the little magical part that says when the user clicks on it, highlight something. I'm going to give it a name, and then I'm going to go on and do the next one. And I can now, just stepping through, I can see these lines come in one at a time. So again, I'm not expecting you to look at this and say, I'm not expecting you to know how to do this now, right? This is just kind of walking through this, seeing how this whole thing works. What time does class get out? Like in 2 minutes? So it's probably about time for us to quit here. I've never done this example on the first day before today. And I hesitate to do this for fear that maybe some of us looking at this going, oh my heavens, how could I ever do this? It looks so complex. How many of you are feeling that way right now? You might be there. Before you drop the class, please come and talk to me and let me help kind of tell you where we're going. And I'm in room 778. If you really want to drop the class, I'm not going to try to prevent you. I want to help give you a feeling for where we're going. And I really expect you to look at this point and say, okay, I think I followed most of that. It's kind of powerful. I hope I can do that someday. That's where I'm hoping for you to be right now. That's where I expect you to be right now. Questions? Okay. Thanks for coming. I will get the link posted for homework. It will be due the night of the next time we meet. I'll get that posted by tomorrow so you'll be able to look through that. Thank you for coming. Class dismissed.